What first drew me to Justin was the fact that he was just so different than all the other guys. And I hadn't really been real interested in dating before him just because I felt like I just had really high standards and I was looking for a certain person.
Well, you done me and you bet I felt it. I tried to beat you, but you're so hot that I melted. I fell right through the cracks. Now I'm trying to get back. Before the cool done run out, I'll be giving it my bestest, and nothing's gonna stop me.
Okay, how we met. I went to Indiana Wesleyan University my freshman year of college, and I became best friends with Justin's sister Leah. He called Leah one day and wanted to take her and some friends out to dinner in Indianapolis because that's where he was living and working. And so I was chosen to go. And we went to P.F. Chang's and we ended up sitting next to each other.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's how we met. I was just like, ooh, hey.
Well, we actually had met a time before that, but briefly.
Oh, yeah. It was brief.
It was brief. First time I met her was at a birthday party for my uncle, and
no, it was for Anna.
It was for Anna, and to be really honest, there was no. I don't know. It wasn't. She was my sister's friend. I didn't really want to have anything to do with it. Leah had kind of been prodding me. Hey, take her. I'd really like you to get to know my friend Steph and all this kind of stuff. No. And then dinner, we talked. Everything was easy and flawless, and it just rolled from there. So first date, after the many emails that were sent back and forth,
like a ton,
from when we started, I asked her for a phone number. We started talking.
He called me, and we talked on the phone, and just like the emails, the phone conversations would get longer and longer and longer, and before you know it, he had his uncle's wedding coming up. My
uncle was getting married, and that was a way for me to ask for a first date, so to speak.
He called my parents, and they were just very impressed by him.
When I first asked Stephanie out, because of the distance between her parents and me, I wasn't able to introduce myself to him. So one thing I did want to do was at least call them out of respect and out of the, from the upbringing I had, and at least let them hear my voice, know what I did, and kind of what my intentions were with their daughter.
I answered the phone when Justin called, and he wanted to know if Marv was home. He wanted to talk to both of us. And I said we were just getting ready to go out to dinner, and we would be back later on, that he could call back then. And he said, well, how about 7 o'clock? So I said, 7 o'clock sounds great.
After my mom hung up from talking to him, she said, I think I just talked to my future son-in-law.
When I came home from the office, Barb mentioned to me that we may be getting a telephone call, and it was a gentleman named Justin Butler, a young man who was interested in dating Stephanie. He indicated that he'd call at 7 o'clock in the evening, and precisely at 7 p.m., the phone rang, and yes, it was Justin. He immediately began to talk about his life and how he was committed to Christ. Upon finishing the conversation, he asked me if I had any questions. And I suggested that he drives carefully and that it was perfectly fine, and that it sounds like that he's a nice young man and it would be fine for him to date our daughter.
I very clearly knew that Stephanie was the one for me.
He just said, I love you, and there's no doubt that you're the one. And I was like, I'm so relieved that you said that because I've been feeling like that for so long.
I immediately began to determine how I was going to propose to Steph.
He told me on a Saturday night, it was Sunday night, Sunday before Memorial Day, that he was going to take me on a fancy dinner. And all I knew was that I needed to dress up.
The first few things that I learned about Steph were, 1, she loved the city of Chicago. 2, she grew up on water and therefore loved to be around water. And 3, that her family was very important to her. So I began to think about how I could incorporate these 3 things into my proposal.
So he said that we were going to be going on a fancy dinner date, and at this date there will be 4 surprises. And I had no idea what they would be. So we just left, and all I knew was to dress up, and I didn't know how far away we were going.
For the proposal, I ended up creating a day trip for Steph and I, and all I told her was that we were going out to somewhere fancy and she needed to have a nice dress and that it was a bit of a car ride to get to where we were going.
We just started driving, and being as smart as I am, I just saw some street signs for Chicago and realized maybe we're going to Chicago.
So the first surprise was Chicago.
We parked, we were walking down Navy Pier, and I was like, what? I had no idea what he possibly could be planning. And so we ended up just we got into a line for this dinner boat.
So we're walking down Navy Pier, and I drag her to this big long line for surprise number 2, a dinner boat cruise on the lake.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is perfect because I love water. And that's my second surprise. So the first one was Chicago, and then the second one was this dinner boat. And it was fancy, and it was like every girl's dream, let's just face it. And we got up to our table, and there were like roses on the table, and so we ordered dinner, and I could tell that he was a little nervous about something, but I still didn't want to get my hopes up.
So the chef was supposed to have "Will you marry me" written on the dessert. When we got onto the boat, we realized that everything had changed and it was a buffet style dessert. So now I'm having to think on my feet of how to do this. And we end up taking a walk around the boat and making it up to the top level on the deck. And there wasn't a soul up there, and it was absolutely perfect. So I dropped down to my knee and asked her if she was ready for surprise number 3.
I was just ecstatic, and pretty much everyone on the boat knew about it, like everyone that worked there. So we came down and everyone was like clapping for us and stuff, and there's a big fireworks show. And I'm like, what could the 4th surprise be after I just got engaged? That was the best surprise ever.
As we were exiting the boat, I told Stephanie that I had one more surprise for her that evening, and I had arranged for both of our families to be there once we walked off the end of Navy Pier.
So we were walking back to the car, and I'm like, okay, maybe we're just going back home, or I don't know what we're doing. But out of nowhere, my whole family was there. Just Leah, I think, jumped on my back, and then Matt was there, and I'm like, well, what's going on? But yeah, both of our whole families were there. That was my 4th surprise, and they were 4 amazing surprises.
After spending just a short amount of time with Stephanie, it became very evident that her values and morals were very much the same as mine, that were based from a godly upbringing that we both felt were important in our lives.
Moving forward, I just want to live my life biblically. I want to be a wife that God wants me to be. And I think that any marriage would be what God intends, obviously, if both the husband and wife are living by His standards and His rules.
I've been spending way too long checking my tongue in the mirror and bending over backwards just to try to see it clearer, but my breath fogged up the glass, and so I drew a new face and I laughed. I guess what I'll be saying is there ain't no better reason to rid yourself of vanities and just go with the seasons. It's what we aim to do. Our name is our